Welcome back to Michael Tells, the channel where we sit down and listen to real, honest stories about people's lives. Today's one stayed with me for a while. It's quiet, but it goes to some heavy places. Before we start, if you can, drop a like or leave a comment. The channel's going through a rough patch right now, and honestly, even that small thing helps more than you know. Let's get into it.
My mom's best friend asked me to keep a secret. I was 23, and I said yes. Everybody goes to the age thing first, 41 and 23. Anytime this comes up, that's the first place people land. Like that was the problem. It wasn't. The hard part was Sundays. My mom's kitchen table in University Place, passing food down the line, and the woman I was seeing sitting right across from me. Both of us acting like we barely knew each other's schedules. That's the part nobody guesses, and it's the part that actually took everything apart. But I'm getting ahead of it. Let me back up. Back then, I was 23, living in Lakewood with a buddy from Pierce College. I worked dispatch for a building supply company out in Fife. Route coordinator, technically. Wrong addresses, late trucks, some guy calling me at 6 in the morning because a customer gave him the wrong gate code. I'd be at my desk before it was even light out. Drove a 2013 Mazda 3, dark blue, bought used, with a dent in the back door I never fixed. Not a sad life, not an exciting one either. I hadn't dated anybody serious in about a year, and I wasn't looking. I want that on the record, because later my mom asked me, more than once, when exactly I decided to do this to her. And the honest answer is, I never decided anything. It kind of just happened, one small thing at a time. The first small thing was a box. My mom, Kara, had one of her get-togethers on a Saturday, and her best friend Heidi left some stuff behind. A serving dish, a cardigan, I don't even remember. Mom asked me to run it over to Furcrest since I was driving that way. Figured I'd hand it off at the door and be home in 20 minutes. I'd known Heidi basically my whole life. She and my mom had been friends something like 18 years. But she moved to Spokane when I was around 11, then Oregon after that, so I only really saw her at the occasional birthday. She came back to the area when I was 21. She wasn't some second mom. She was just Heidi, mom's friend, somebody at the edge of the picture. When I got there, she was on the garage floor swearing at a metal shelving unit, one of those cheap ones. Half the parts were on the concrete and the instructions were useless. So I stayed and put it together. Took 20 minutes. Then she made coffee and we sat in her kitchen, and 40 minutes went by and I didn't really notice. I think what got me was that she asked about my job like she actually wanted the answer. Not the, so what's the plan thing adults do to a 23-year-old. She asked how dispatch worked, what made a bad day bad, laughed at the story about the driver who kept delivering to the wrong house because the numbers on the mailbox were faded. I don't know. Nobody had asked me a real question in a while. I drove home and told myself it was nothing. After that, we texted sometimes, not every day. She sent me a photo of the shelf standing up straight, some caption about teamwork. I asked her for a food place in Olympia because she used to live down there. She sent a picture of a dumb vanity plate she saw on I-5. We joked about bad plates that first day. Once she asked how the mailbox guy thing turned out at work. Weeks of that. If you'd asked me back then whether I was flirting with my mom's best friend, I'd have thought you were nuts. That's not what this is, I'd have said. And I'd have meant it. Then one week, we both realized we'd be in Tacoma the same evening, and she said we should grab coffee. Not a date, coffee. We sat there way longer than we planned. Did it again the next week. Then one evening, we ended up walking around Point Defiance in the cold, and neither of us wanted to leave. It was in the parking lot after that one that I finally just said it. What are we doing here? She laughed. Then she stopped laughing, and I watched her realize she didn't have an answer either. It wasn't friendship anymore. We both knew it, and we'd known it for a couple weeks and just hadn't said it out loud. And here's the part that's in the title. She didn't say this was a mistake. She didn't say I was too young. She said if my mom found out right now, before we even knew ourselves whether this was anything, it'd get crushed before it had a chance to be anything. She wasn't ashamed of me, she said. She didn't think I was a kid. She just said she knew Kara, and there was no version of that conversation where things stayed normal afterward. So she asked me not to tell anyone yet, especially not my mom. And I knew it was a bad idea. I wasn't confused about that. But I was 23, and "we'll tell her later" didn't sound like some huge decision. It sounded like later. And honestly, I kind of liked the feeling of us having something nobody else got an opinion on. So I said yes. I said okay. Easiest word I ever said. Cost me the most.
Okay, real talk. Right here is where I would have grabbed him by the shoulders. One little, okay, and it sounds like nothing, right? But that's how these things always start. Never the big lie, just a small, we'll deal with it later.
The first stretch, it barely felt like a secret. It felt like a life. We'd meet in Tacoma, drove out to Gig Harbor a couple times, spent a whole day in Olympia once, and drove back after dark. Watched movies at her place. I fixed stuff around her house. A gate that dragged, a smoke detector that chirped at 2 in the morning. Nothing out of a movie. We argued about music. She did not get half of what I listened to. I gave her endless grief for texting like someone who still puts a period at the end of every message. She got me back for eating the same thing out of the same container 3 days straight because I'd meal prepped on Sunday and wouldn't admit it was a mistake. She was the first person I'd been with who'd just say, "I'm annoyed with you," instead of making me guess for 2 days. I don't know how to explain why that mattered so much, but it did. And I think what she liked was that I didn't look at her and see a divorced 41-year-old. I didn't try to fix her life. I just liked being around her. So no, it wasn't only about it being off limits. That's the whole problem. If it had been nothing, it would have been easy to stop. First month, it was interesting. By the third, it was uncomfortable. By the fifth, it was just exhausting. Because my mom talks about Heidi. Of course she does. They're best friends. So I'd be at mom's and she'd go, "Heidi's been kind of distant lately. I think she might be seeing somebody." And I'd say, "Maybe." Then mom would tell me something about Heidi, and that same night I'd be with Heidi and know something she hadn't even told me herself. After a while, that started feeling really wrong. I started cutting my mom off. She'd start in about Heidi, and I'd say, "You should just talk to her about that." Kind of short. And she'd look at me like, "Where's this coming from?" From where she stood, it came from nowhere. There was one Friday, she asked if I had plans, and I said, probably just hanging out at home. Then I got in the car to drive to Heidi's and realized I'd lied without even thinking about it. That one bugged me. It wasn't a decision anymore. It was just a thing I did now. There was a barbecue at her place. Nothing big, a few neighbors, a couple people from her clinic. Heidi was there, obviously. She's always there. Sitting right across the table from me. And at some point, my mom, joking, elbows me and goes, "You ever gonna bring somebody around? Let me meet a girl before I'm old." Heidi looked down at her plate. Just for a second. I made some joke, everybody laughed, and that was when it stopped being fun. Sitting there, I felt the whole thing turn into something else. Later I told Heidi, we just lied to her face. Both of us. At the same time. She said, "I know." Around 5-6 months in, I told her I couldn't keep doing it. If this wasn't going anywhere, we should just end it. And if it was going somewhere, then Mom deserved to know, because I couldn't sit at that table one more Sunday. She said she needed a little more time. I said, "You keep saying that." She said, "Because it's true." And that's the night the ugly thought showed up. Maybe it wasn't the situation she wanted to hide. Maybe it was me. Maybe some part of her didn't want to tell her best friend she was with a 23-year-old dispatcher who lived with a roommate and ate leftovers out of a container. I said it out loud. I knew even while I was saying it that it wasn't really fair. She told me that wasn't it, and I believed her. Mostly. But it sat there anyway.
All right, deep breath, because this next part is the moment everything cracks. And here's the thing that gets me. It's not some dramatic blow up. It's the most ordinary night you can imagine. That's what makes it hurt. If you're feeling how heavy this is getting, drop a comment right now. I actually read them. Okay, here's how his mom found out.
Here's how my mom found out. And there's no big dramatic thing to it. No photo, no text to the wrong person. It was the most boring night imaginable. It was raining. This is Washington, so really raining. I'd had a long day and drove to Heidi's after work. Normally I parked a street over, some habit I'd fallen into without ever deciding to. But it was coming down hard, and I was tired, and I just pulled the Mazda in right in front of her house. About an hour later, my mom pulled up behind it. She'd had a terrible day. She'd stopped and grabbed dinner for two on impulse. Figured she'd just drop in on her closest friend, because that's a thing you get to do with somebody after 18 years. She saw my car and didn't think anything of it. Figured I was helping Heidi with something. She knocked. Heidi opened the door, and I was standing right there in the hallway. No jacket, my shoes by the door, 2 plates on the kitchen counter. Nothing was happening. Nothing you could point at. But my mom's not stupid, and she stood in that doorway for about a second, and I watched it land. That this wasn't me helping with a shelf. She didn't yell. That's what made it bad. She barely raised her voice. She was still holding the takeout bag. First thing she said was just, "How long?" Heidi didn't say anything, so I said it. Almost 7 months. And it was the number that got her, not the fact of it. 7 months. She stood there, and I could see her going back through all of it. She said, 7 months. Then, you both knew. Every time we were all sitting there together, you both knew. Then, quieter, I was the only one who didn't. I tried to say it was my decision too, that Heidi didn't make me do anything. And she just looked at me, tired, and said she knew that. She knew I was 23. She wasn't going to stand there and pretend Heidi dragged me into it. And that was worse than if she'd screamed. Because it meant the problem wasn't that her son picked the wrong person. It was that her son and her best friend built a whole thing she wasn't allowed in on and left her outside it for 7 months, feeling like an idiot. She set the food bag down by the door. Nobody remembered to touch it. Then she left. Heidi said my name. I told her, not right now. Mom stopped talking to Heidi after that. Not in a big way. She didn't block her or make a scene. She just stopped calling. Stopped answering the long messages Heidi sent. They'd talked almost every day for years. Then they just didn't. And here's the part I didn't see coming. Heidi and I finally had it out in the open. No more parking a street over, no more lying at the table. You'd think that would fix things. It made them worse. Every fight came back to the same place now. We'd argue about something small, dinner plans, whatever, and 5 minutes in, I'd say, "This is exactly what I mean. And she'd say, "What does this have to do with your mom?" And I'd say, "Apparently everything does now." We kept saying the secret was there to protect the relationship. By then it was pretty obvious it had done the opposite. And Mom wasn't a saint through it either. A while later she said Heidi should have known better. Older, divorced, supposed to be the responsible one. And I stopped her. I said, "And I shouldn't have? I was 23, Mom, not 13. I wasn't going to let her make me the kid who got taken advantage of just because it was an easier story. It wasn't true. I looked at a bad idea and said okay because I wanted to. That part was on me." Heidi and I made it about 2 more months. No blow up, no other guy, no cheating. Just one night, sitting in my car outside a restaurant, both of us kind of worn out. And I asked her, "If we could go back to that first day, would you ask me to keep it a secret again?" She was quiet a long time. Then she said, "No, me neither." And we both kind of realized we'd been spending more time talking about my mom and everything we wrecked than about each other. She said, "I don't think we're happy anymore." I didn't say anything. Then she said, "I think we're just trying really hard to make all of it mean something." That was it. Quiet. It hurt, but it was done, and we both knew it. That was about a year ago. I'm 24 now. Got a better logistics job and moved down closer to Vancouver. New apartment, new routes, further from all of it. Heidi and I don't talk. We didn't stay friends. There's no maybe someday version floating around out there. And Heidi and my mom never fixed it either. That's the part that still gets me. 18 years. They ran into each other once through some mutual friend. Apparently they talked for maybe 2 minutes. Nobody said anything bad. They were polite. Honestly, that almost made it sadder. Me and my mom are okay now. Mostly. But something's different. And I don't think it comes all the way back. Sometimes, right before I tell her something, I catch myself thinking, do I need to tell her this? And I never used to do that. Not once, my whole life. So here's where I land when people ask. I don't think it was wrong that a 23-year-old fell for a 41-year-old. We were both adults. For a while, we were actually happy. I'm not going to pretend I regret her. What I regret is the first night she said, "Let's just not tell anyone for a while." And I said, "Okay." Felt like the easiest thing in the world. Just a word. A year later, I didn't have Heidi. My mom didn't have her best friend of almost 20 years. And there's this little crack between me and my mother that's still not gone. And none of it started the day we fell for each other. It all started the day we decided the truth could wait.
And that's where it ends. No happy little bow, no big reunion, just a quiet lesson that cost 3 people way too much. Look, the truth is uncomfortable, but hiding it, that's the thing that actually wrecks people. So let me ask you honestly, was he wrong for saying yes? Or was the real mistake staying quiet? Tell me down in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this one hit you, hit that like. It genuinely helps the channel more than you know. I'm Michael. I'll see you in the next story.